Good evening, everybody. We are here tonight for the webinar that we hold to support our conference called Understanding Human Mind that we hold each year. This year in May, as from 18th till 19th May in Prague. My name is Kateřina, and I will host tonight's webinar. I've got two wonderful guests, and I'm very happy that they are both here to answer my curious questions. But first of all, please let me introduce our NGO that we set up quite recently. Loredana Popasav, Martin Jotov, and myself, we set up an NGO called the Human Potential Academy, and we would like this academy to support education in mental health. And we would like to spread among the people the knowledge that mental health can actually help people to reach their full potential. So now I would like to introduce two speakers that are with me tonight. First of all, welcome from America, Dr. Amy Johnson. Hello.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Amy is a psychologist, author, and speaker, and she shares a groundbreaking new approach that helps people find true and lasting freedom from unwanted habits and addictions, and she also specializes in anxiety. She wrote several books. One of them she's going to bring to our conference for you to see and have signed from her, which we are very happy to have. And she set up a wonderful school. She calls it Little School of Big Change. Am I right?
Yes.
And there she helps many people through online courses to deal with their addictions and habits, anxieties, whatever they need to help with. So I'm very happy to have you, Amy, because you were also on the shows with Oprah. So I feel like, wow, it's really something special for me. So thank you for coming. Our second and wonderful guest is Lori. Her full name is Loredana Popasav, but I'm going to call her Lori. With
so I know that I'm not in trouble.
Yes, so that you're not in trouble, but also that you are beloved by us. And Lori comes from the business background. She owned marketing company before. She worked in several positions connected with marketing and creativity. However, at one point in her life, she decided to change her career and become helping others to find themselves within themselves. So right now she runs a company which is called The Simplified Mind. And she is also co-founder of the Human Potential Academy. And she is also co-founder of the conference. So, wow, great to have you here, both of you ladies. So, because we have only like an hour, maybe hour and a half, depending on how many questions we get from all the participants, that we hope some more will connect tonight. We'll see if we prolong the hour, but I would like to start right now with questions. I will start with Amy, if you don't mind, because I'm very curious. For me, it's very strange how you combine the traditional analytical psychology that you've been taught at school, for sure, with the psychology of this new approach. How do you combine them? Because for me, the analytical psychology is very much about troubles, problems, and digging in them. And as far as I know, you took completely other approach towards solving those issues. How do you combine them?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I like you said at the end there, I kind of don't really combine them. I was definitely trained in that more traditional approach, and I did that for a long time, and I practiced it myself as a practitioner, but also as a client. I had lots of traditional therapy myself to kind of help with different issues I was going through, and on both counts, it was helpful in many ways, but it also just always felt like there must be more that we can see. There must be better we can do. As a professional, sharing more in a traditional way or helping people in more of a traditional way that focuses on what's wrong and what's lacking and coping with issues and managing our stress and doing all of those things, I could see people coming in and feeling a little hopeful and maybe leaving in a better mood or leaving with some new ideas, which was great. It was better than when they came in sometimes. But then they'd come back a week or 2 weeks later and their mood had shifted over the week, of course, as moods do. And so there wasn't a lot that seemed like it was sticking. It just seemed like they would be kind of getting some fresh ideas, but then going back to their old thinking. And so I just saw that, and I saw the same thing in myself. Again, I tried for so long to overcome my own habits and my own anxiety and my own issues, and I would see the same thing, and like a little bit of hope, and I'd get really excited and motivated, but then the old stuff would come back, and I didn't know what to do with that. So this new approach, this new understanding that's going to be shared at the conference is really like the only place I focus now, just because it does flip that traditional psychology on its head a bit. It's a completely opposite paradigm in a lot of ways, but I've seen it actually lead to freedom, where you can have your moods and you can have thoughts and feelings going all over the place, but there's still something that shifts and sticks and is different for people.
I'll unmute myself. Thank you. I'm very glad to hear that. That people are happy with the new approach and they leave the old one. Because Freud and Jung, they are really, how old is that theory? The psychology, it's almost 100 years old, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty long. Laurie, how did you find the knowledge of habits and addictions useful in your practice? Because you work with business clients, do they need or want to know more about it? Does it somehow influence their work life?
I wish I would have been that cool, but I wasn't. It was actually about me this time, because I was smoking and I just wanted to get rid of that. Which I have to say, I'm not smoking. Since the 1st of December, I'm not smoking. Literally. So that got me there, but not only. It's true that you meet clients and you meet people around, and they all need help in a way or the other. And habits and addictions came obvious to me, and came obvious from the meetings that we had, from what my clients were saying to me. And I'll give you an example so you'll understand. So the other day I was having a client, and she told me about a bad relationship that she had with a colleague. And, but he was in the wrong and he did that. And every day I remember that and I'm being upset. And I said, but that doesn't exist. And, but it's coming from him and it's the situation. And then, okay. And to me, it looked like habitual thinking. Habitual thinking that she was tormenting herself with. And in the same time putting it on someone else. And it was very new for this lady to hear that the only person that she's tormenting is herself. Surprise, surprise. And that all she's experiencing is a memory, some thinking. And became easier for her to say, well, actually, now that you put it like that, I can give up on that. And this kind of conversations got me into habits and addictions. And I found in Amy a very good teacher. And even for me, some things that Amy said were new. I never looked at moods as a habit. But after listening Amy talking about this, and Amy, if you don't mind, I would like you to speak about this for a bit, because that was quite illuminating, let's say, for me.
Yeah, it's not, we're used to thinking of habits and addictions as things like smoking, right? Things that we do, behaviors, and even thought patterns, but we'll have this weird way of kind of picking out a specific thought pattern and, oh, that's habitual, but it is really, really exciting and interesting and different to see, oh my gosh, almost everything that moves through us, thoughts, feelings, moods, and desires to act and habitual behaviors. But so much of that is just sort of coming from little mind, what I call little mind, like our little brain, our little habitual ways. We just like our kind of robotic ways that we kind of just wake up and see life the same way we saw it yesterday. So much of that is habitual. And that's something that I love about this understanding. And without having to even do anything, just by seeing, oh yeah, so much of our life is this habitual little chatter that determines everything we see. It creates everything we see. And there's more to us than that little chatter. It automatically, just by starting to look at that and hear that, people begin to pay a little less attention, I think, to the automatic chatter. We take our moods less seriously, like the example you gave, Lori. Like we take our grief and our anger and our frustration with other people less seriously because we see our mind falling into this loop. And when we're taking all of that a little less seriously, a whole world opens up that's been there all along, but we were so kind of caught in our loop that we overlooked it.
Yes, and since you asked, Kat, you see, that is what got me into it, because what businesses usually ask me is, how would my people be more efficient, more effective? Now, just imagine that you spend your time having this habitual thinking going on. You're not very effective and you're not very efficient, and it doesn't help. Whereas, as Amy said, it opens up a lot of space, and a lot of space where you can be creative and productive and can do something good for yourself. I'll let you to the next question. If you unmute yourself, Katerina.
I've got two computers open and I confused the mouses. When I was looking into the past conversation you two had on different platforms, it looks like most of the habits and addictions are connected with some kind of anxiety, that I'm anxious that I would get infected with germs, so I start to wash my hands. And at one point, I find myself washing my hands every 5 minutes. It's like being addicted to washing my hands. But what really the anxiety is? What is it in us?
I think there are different words we could use to answer that, but what it all kind of, in my understanding, what it all kind of comes back to is it's a feeling, it's an experience, right? It isn't us. It isn't telling us anything about life out there, about germs in that example, or about anything out there. It's an inner experience, and that's essentially what everything is. It comes from within us, and it comes to life within us in a way that brings in our physical sensations in our bodies, that we feel anxious physically. It brings in our emotions. It brings other thoughts to the party. So now we have all these other anxious thoughts. It brings reasons and justifications and, all evidence and proof and all of that stuff in our own mind. But essentially what it is an inner experience. And what's so great about that is, like, this inner experience, it has a flow to it. It isn't us. It's not stable. It wants to move through us, but because it's brought to life in such a way, and because we don't really know how this works in general, the general population doesn't really think about things like this or know it in this way, we feel something like anxiety, like you said, or we just feel any bit of discomfort, and we instantly go to do something. we go to wash our hands or light the cigarette or whatever it is we do. So, it's a safe, meaningless, innocent little feeling that's moving through. But where we start to get into trouble then, is by jumping into some kind of behavior or action or something to try to make that feeling go away.
Lori, would you maybe say what it means from your side?
Apart from a lot of thinking and a lot of feeling, I think in this moment I would leave Amy's answer, or I would say the same thing. I might come back to it. But I really loved what Amy said about it. It's really a little feeling that some moment looks both compelling and very biting or binding. But it's not true. My screen makes a lot of funny things, and I apologize if I look in all sorts of places. Will this be anxiety? Because I don't feel it much.
Don't worry, it'll change.
So what I would like for the participants, you can raise your hand. Sorry for not giving you the technical informations. You can raise your hand. You have a little hand there. If you raise your hand, I will unmute you and let you speak. Otherwise, I'll keep you muted so we don't have a lot of noise, or we try not to. Right.
Great. One of the next questions that I hear quite a lot, and I caught myself also thinking about that. It's connected with addictions. Many people do not believe that they can fight an addiction that is chemically induced only with their will, only with their mind, whatever it is. Because also I was taught at school that the chemical stuff influences you so much that you actually cannot live without it, like with heroin. And you have to go to some kind of rehab or something. Amy, how does it work? Because you are a specialist in this. Is it possible to fight it without rehab, or is it not?
It is possible. I mean, many people find freedom from things without rehab, and many people find rehab helpful. So, I mean, different things are going to be helpful for different people at different times. But it is, that's what I love too about just being able to share stories and see how people found freedom. So many people find freedom in such a variety of ways, and through this understanding, I mean, this is why we do conferences like this one, and share this on such a large scale, because we see so many good things coming from this understanding. But the thing that I think is so interesting to see is we all have even heard of stories where people get a diagnosis and then they just drop their addiction, or someone close to them dies, or they move, or they go for a walk outside and they have some revelation and they stop their addiction. So those kind of stories aren't talked about all that much. We hear things and maybe even learn things in school, like you said, that no, you have to go to rehab, but clearly that's not the case. And I just think that's so important for people to see, because it starts to point us to what we share in this understanding, which is there cannot be a set of steps or behaviors or things we have to do that you kind of earn your freedom after you do these things. There's no way, because all the time people just outgrow habits. People just, like, this happens. And I'm not, again, if you have a habit, I'm not saying sit around, or an addiction, I'm not saying sit around and wait to outgrow it. But I think we need to look at the fact that happens and see what that shows us. And to me, what that shows us is that we have health within us. We are incredibly resilient, far beyond what we've been told and how it looks, how it looks to us. And that's a really hopeful place for people to come from, from being able to see that and remembering that. So, when people have a chemical addiction, like a heroin addiction, for example, I see it all the time, that people can begin to see, okay, yes, this is what my brain is doing. Yes, my body is screaming for the drug. My brain is demanding the drug, but I am not those things. There is an us that's bigger than any feeling, bigger than what any body part can ever do, that ultimately, as we get familiar with that and as we look in that direction, starts to come up even bigger and bigger and help us. And it isn't, like you said, it isn't willpower, and it isn't even fighting anything. It's really just having that huge urge and the addiction and all of that feeling start to look different to us, such that it kind of starts to lose its power a little bit, because we see it's a feeling. It's a big one. It's a lot bigger than your average feeling, but it is still a feeling, and it works in the same way.
What I remember also from you saying is the problem is rarely the problem, and this is something that I shared with people, and I saw that it was useful. Moment when they stopped looking at their addiction as the problem and see it as the solution that they created at some point in their lives for something that was going on. And that I saw as a tremendous help, because all of a sudden, looking for the problem, they either realized that they didn't need a solution anymore, or that the problem didn't exist.
That's so huge for people to see. It really is, because when we're looking at this addiction, this habit, this thing as a problem, it's so natural for us to then just focus on it so much. And then naturally, our mind goes to, how can I change it? How can I fix it? Why do I have it? All of that stuff, which just bombards us with thoughts about this thing, which this thing, like you said, it's something we've learned to do for some other reason way back, essentially because we didn't feel comfortable in a feeling. So we did this thing, and now the solution starts to look like the problem, So that is gigantic, because again, if we're looking at it as a problem, we're so focused on it, and we're going to miss so much. We're just going to see more problem. But when we start to see, oh no, this is actually a solution because I'm healthy, because I'm so wise and healthy and I want to feel good, I stumbled on this really bad solution. But knowing that points us back to our health. Wow, there is a resilience in there. I found something. Now, it's not a great solution, but I found what I needed in a moment. And if I can look past the habit or addiction, I can start to get back to seeing that resilience and that health, and get curious, like we're saying, about how people find freedom, and why sometimes, even when you're really addicted, sometimes you're not thinking about the thing you're addicted to. It's just not there. Now, what about that? No, we don't look there. We don't get curious about that because we're so focused on the problem. So I think that's a huge thing.
Well, actually, I asked myself, because smoking was, for me, determined by the wanting to socialize with people. So at the point I started to smoke, everyone in the office was smoking, and I was left out. All the gossip happened there. I had to work more because I didn't have an excuse to go for a break, obviously. So that for me was a socializer, or alliance for socializing. But then many years later, not only that it wasn't a solution anymore, or a good solution, it was the bad solution for that, because it turned upside down and no one was smoking anymore. So I was again left outside this time, not smoking, and everyone was in. So it didn't make any sense. And it was really helpful for me to look at it and to see it as the solution that worked at some point, but which doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
So from what you both said, I caught something at the beginning of what Amy said. It's about mental illnesses. I don't remember how you said it. You just asked about if I know people with mental illnesses. As a matter of fact, I know quite many people who's got so-called mental illness. I call it nowadays so-called mental illness, because I'm not sure if it's actually exist? And I would like your opinion about it, because I know people who were diagnosed with schizophrenia like 10, maybe even more years ago. And when you meet them today, they said, oh, actually, the doctor realized it was not that mental illness. They're not sure actually what it was. My very close friend, she got her liver destroyed from so many medications. They were not sure what her mental illness is. They said, you are ill. They gave her so many pills that she went to pieces. And now they actually don't know what the illness is, but they tell her she's ill. So tell me, Amy, are the mental illnesses real?
Well, I just can only say how I see it and how I've seen it over the years. But of course, there's an experience of mental illness that people have. So when someone is hearing voices, whatever we would classify that as schizophrenia, or when someone feels really horrible for a long period of time, we might call that depression. Now, their feelings are real. Their experience is a real experience for them. But that's really, really different than saying you have this thing. And even just hearing, Lori share about smoking, and I have a very similar story with my own smoking. I used to smoke. It's like if someone had said to us, you're a smoker, the way that we say to people, you're schizophrenic, or you're depressed, or you're this or that, it's like everything else, our mind is so efficient. Our brain is so efficient. It cannot take everything in. It just will kind of cling to these labels and say, okay, well, I guess that's me, moving on. And then we just keep seeing evidence of what we've been told and what we believe. So no question, people feel badly. No question, things happen, that are a little not in the norm of what we would call healthy. Like, again, I'm thinking like a schizophrenic that's paranoid and has all kinds of thoughts and that type of thing. That happens. But if we can start to see, wow, these are just examples, maybe extreme examples, but examples of thought being brought to life, which is happening all day, every day for every single person who's ever walked the face of the earth, then we start to normalize the whole thing. The thought that's being brought to life for all of us right now, maybe not that extreme, but if it's the same thing, essentially the exact same thing, and it operates in the same way as thought brought to life for a person who's extremely depressed or suicidal or schizophrenic right now, well, now we're all on this same normal kind of plane, and now we can see something about that. Now we can get curious about their health again and help them see, you feel horrible, but maybe you don't need to just medicate that away or, change this or change that or have this label, and it frees us up to have a little bit of a shift in our experience. So I don't know if that helps, but it's like, it is a real experience, and I would never want to take that away from anyone. Like, I was anxious and afraid to leave my house for 2 years at one point. That was very real. It was also created in my thinking. And it also was not anything stable because it's nowhere to be found now. And even in the middle of it, there were moments where I was not anxious. So it doesn't have the stability that it seems like it does.
It's very nice. We have Kirsten that has something to share.
Yes, thank you. Hi. It's going back to smoking, but actually it's also labeling and a habit. And my experience with smoking was very similar and also very freeing. And I wanted to share that I used to live in the States, where smoking is like a real bad habit. When I lived there, it was like nobody did that. And coming from Germany, I was like, yeah, on parties I used to smoke. So I was kind of like the only one who always went in front of the door. So unless your experience with socializing, for me, it was just like the opposite. I felt so terrible going out there and even wasn't able to buy any cigarettes anywhere. So after 2 weeks, it just wasn't any fun anymore. And I could just quit and had nothing like, any symptoms or any, like my body was craving for this nicotine or whatever. If I see people smoke like cigarettes now or something, I think, well, they're still preoccupied thinking that they need to smoke. So that was the first experience I had like years ago. And then I moved back to Germany. It was the same thing. I started smoking again with my friends. And I always felt it's just my head. When I was in the car with my kids, I would never even think of smoke, and I didn't have a craving or urge. And then when I went to a party, even if I didn't drink any alcohol, it's just like a mental game. And the same thing, I thought, like New Year's, people say, well, we want to quit on New Year's. I thought, no, I'm stubborn. I don't need New Year's. If I want to quit, I quit. Because it's just up in my thinking. And so I always felt like it's real and just my thought, and that it's not me, and that I can just don't think about it whenever I don't want to smoke again. And so I just quit in the middle of the year, any day. I think it was a Wednesday, or I don't know. And I recently just met a friend, and he had a serious heart injury. So he was a big time smoker, and he said he quit smoking because he was afraid about his health. But then he said, but they talked to him all the time, like 2 weeks after we've been talking about how to quit smoking, how dangerous it is to start again, and special program. And he said, like, I just want to quit. It's not even in my mind anymore. And having people to talk about that so much, it makes me be so much occupied with that theme. So just like it's labeled as something, whether that we are mentally sick or we are in the urge for needing something, it's just made up. And how freeing is that? So that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love that. I love those stories of just how it doesn't have to go the way we think it has to go. You know, you think you have to do it a certain way, or it's going to feel a certain way. And there's so many examples of how it's not that way.
Mm-hmm. And it's so freeing to understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you.
But we also associate a lot of things, and I remember associating having a cigarette with calming down. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And I know that, but this is how I relaxed. Or when I was angry, when I was putting on a cigarette, but what actually relaxed me or calmed me down was the 5 minutes break that I took. The getting myself away from whatever was preoccupying me in that moment and seemed very zoom and very heavy. And just that moment was my escape moment, but it had nothing to do with the cigarette. The cigarette didn't do that.
It didn't give you freedom.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's so true. It's probably true with all habits, all addictions, and all also mental cases that are labeled for something. And I think if people understand that underneath that there's something true and healthy and something that can't be hurt by anything, how freeing is that for the person, and also helps to get healthy, I think, if you truly believe in that and truly feel that.
Yeah, it's interesting how when we start to associate these things with a nicer feeling, relaxing or whatever, then we also start thinking, well, I'll never relax again if I give this up. And like you're saying, Kirsten, it's like, no, knowing that it's in there, that relaxation is in there, and that it's going to come to the surface, but we pile all these things on, and then we give that all the credit for helping us feel good when those things, like you're saying, those things never did it to begin with.
Yeah. So if I listen to you, it still seems to me that all of this is a lot of habitual thinking, like Lori said from the beginning. So what's your opinion? In which ways or what fields can we think habitually, in your opinion?
Can you repeat the question again? Sorry. Oh, we can't hear you.
Double clicked instead of one clicking, I'm sorry. I think that lots of this, what you say, is actually habitual thinking, that at this moment when I'm stressed, I should have cigarette because it will help me.
Yeah.
It seems to me like habit. I'm just curious, what other habitual thinking we can get from your experience? Is it only the smoking, or sometimes getting into a mood? Tell me more about this habitual thinking.
Yeah, it's literally everything we can possibly think. It's crazy to see how big it gets. You know, I mean, our feelings of showing up at this webinar, our whole experience of this is in some parts made of habitual thinking. I know how webinars go. I know this, I know that. Now, we're not consciously thinking all this. I'm not saying like we're carrying this around and applying it to, you know, and like consciously doing that, but it shows up for us. It shows up for us. And we end up living in this completely thought-created experience where we're just sort of confirming what we sort of expected. Other ways, just talking recently with some people in my school about these, how we all kind of have this ceiling that we've sort of put on ourselves for like how well things can go or what we can achieve. You know, like we know in theory, and we can go out and be motivated by people and have great ideas, and we know in theory that a lot is possible. Yet every one of us, even without consciously conjuring it up, I mean, we kind of stay in a certain little between these little walls and a ceiling that our thinking has created. You know, we're just doing largely a lot of the same things every day, seeing things in a similar way every day, maybe pushing ourselves a little bit beyond that. But still, as far as we push ourselves, we made that limit up too. So it's really exciting to think about this, you know, like how much is habitual? I mean, we don't know, but all of it, maybe so much of it. And we certainly have new thought. Like, I don't want to make it sound like we're just these little robots that walk around that never, like, we have fresh new thought and insights, and we see through our made up ceilings, and we do push through them, and all of that is wonderful. And it's just really nice to see how that works, because the more we see that there is so much that just shows up for us, the more we get to, in a sense, kind of discount it. You know, like we get suspicious of our own worries and our own limits and our own judgments. All of that stuff that holds us back, we can start to get suspicious of that, because it almost all is habitual thought.
Well, if I may, I will share a story about habitual thinking, which happened in a conversation that I had today with someone that was telling me, look, I have to organize this, and I have plan A, but in the same time, I'm running plan B and plan C in my head. And I looked a bit confused, probably because she stopped and said, why? I ask you with all the love, why would you do that? Yeah, but I learned that you always have to be prepared and to have backup plans, and which is all right, but keeping them constantly in your head doesn't help. And that was as much habitual for this lady as anything else. Mm-hmm. It didn't help her. It didn't make her focus better on plan A that she was pursuing. But she kept on going for that and cluttering her mind. Mm-hmm. And this is basically the way I see all the habits and addictions. And as Amy said, they can be anything. A lot of clutter. That's the way I look at them, as clutter. And you see, when our homes become too cluttered with all sorts of old things that we move around, we have a day and we say, okay, let's throw the rubbish out. Well, I think what we are trying here to say is our minds need the same kind of attention and decluttering of old habits and old habitual thinking that stays with us for years and has no value, brings us nothing new, nothing good, nothing to work with in this moment. Make sense?
It makes sense. But what I hear from you ladies, I came back the full circle to the beginning, where I was comparing the analytical psychology to this new psychology. And I remember from analytical psychology, one very important thing, that actually everything you do, you are supposed to, or you actually blame your parents for, because they teach you these habits. And I have a son, and I always say he will deal with it later with a psychologist, and he will blame me for anything anyway, so I don't have to bother. Anyway, can we actually change what we are, what we have learned to do, and how we learn to behave? Can we change this habitual thinking?
We can change it, but first, again, just to go back to what we were sharing a little bit before, first notice how much it changes on its own. Sure, there are things we've all been thinking our entire lives that feel like they haven't changed, and those are the ones, again, that we focus on. We say, I learned this from my mom, it's her fault. We carry that around. We try to change it, which puts a ton of attention on it. So we all have those. Every one of us has some of those. But look at how many things in your life, from the time you were young, even let's say from the time you were a teenager, ways that you saw the world, judgments you had, preferences you had, fears you had. Look at how many of those have changed completely on their own. So I just think that's like the coolest thing to see, that change is our nature. This stuff wants to come. It's just surface level. It isn't deep. It isn't like the analytical psychologists say, you know, like kind of in your roots and woven in there and really deep. It isn't that deep. We've learned it, so it can't be that deep. It's on the surface. Even when it's repeated a lot and feels like you, it's still relatively shallow. And a lot of that stuff falls away completely on its own. And just by seeing that, I think that puts us on the path to starting to see that other things can fall away as well. So it isn't like, let me go into therapy and talk about this habitual thing I do all the time and try to get to the bottom of it. It's more, for me, it's been sort of this thing of like, okay, I see that this happens. I see that this runs. Like my mind goes here. My mind goes here a lot and in this way, and it's not helpful. And isn't that interesting? And almost like a detachment from it starts to grow. So your mind will still go there. And this is the same with habits and addictions. Your mind might still go to, ooh, that cigarette over there smells good. Or, ooh, this is, I really would like another drink right now. But we start to see that our mind goes all over the place in these habitual ways, and we aren't our minds. And that's where it's really powerful, because it's like, oh my gosh, there's a me in here that can have this little habitual thing running around, but I don't need to listen to that. And it's not always easy, and sometimes it is easy, but that separation is huge for people. And that, again, you might have learned this little stuff from your parents, and you might want to blame them for that, but they're not there making you act on it every day. They're not forcing you to do what it says and listen to it. So that's our misunderstanding.
I think change is more than possible. And as I loved what you said, I think it's actually going back to who you are instead of who you think you are, and all these labels that we put on ourselves, and going back to mental health and knowing that there is mental health inside of us. And all these are labels. And I loved it, because I have plenty of people saying, oh, but this is my belief. And I'm like, do you have the same beliefs that you had at 18? No. And thanks God for that.
Yes.
So on and so on. You don't have the same beliefs you had. And I find it very useful, actually, to take my beliefs sometimes on the terrace and kick them a bit and dust them up and see if they are any good for me anymore, because it can happen that they aren't. And about learning from our parents and our grandparents, after all, because a lot of us have been influenced by them as well. I grew up in a farm, and the habit in the summer months was that I would walk barefoot. Believe me, it doesn't come to me to go barefoot on the streets of Prague. It was a good habit, and I learned it from them. I know it's a funny example, but it's as true as anything else.
Yeah.
So I have another question. It's a bit personal because I'm trying to teach my son not to bite his nails. Whenever he's not conscious even of it, like watching TV or playing video games, he's biting his nails. Or which he suggests to do with this habit when it's a child, he's 10. And I'm trying to get rid of this habit for like 7 years already. Because I just, when I speak to an adult, I guess that they can sort of understand the deeper meaning behind what is said here, but how to speak to a child?
Yeah. Well, I went through that exact thing. So I'll share how it went at my house, but I don't want to make it sound like this is the conversation that fixes it, because it might not go over with your kid. But I have my son's 6, and he was a big nail biter for a long time, and they would bleed and everything. And we notice, we as parents, I'm sure you've started to it sounds like he does it a lot, but you start to kind of notice different patterns to it. So for my son, it would be like, we could kind of tell it was a little bit of a nervous thing. If we were in the car or he was watching a movie, he'd get a little bored and he'd start doing it. But a lot of times it was, around different people, new people, or if he was out on the soccer field, like waiting for the ball to come to him, like you could tell it was like a comfort thing. And that's the thing. I mean, most of our habits are on some level, and it doesn't always make sense to see it that way, but on some level, we're doing this because it helps us feel better in some way. So, I think kids, they might not understand the bigger theory and the intellect behind it, but there's a way, and then what we share here at this conference and in this understanding is just so simple, and really we just kind of sat down and say, hey, we notice that you're doing this. And a lot of times you do it just if you're kind of bored or if you're feeling kind of nervous. Do you notice that your hands go in your mouth at that point? And he said, well, yeah, I know I bite my nails, but I don't really know I'm doing it until you guys tell me to stop doing it, So we just kind of had that conversation and helped him see it looks like something you're doing just to comfort yourself. And we told him kind of what we're sharing here. That's what adults do too, which he thought was pretty cool. Like, oh, adults do that too? Like, yeah, it's not just for like little kids that don't know better. Like adults do that too, and it's sort of like Lori was saying early on, it wasn't a problem anymore. It was now a solution. He could see it as, oh, yeah, I get a little nervous or bored, or I don't even think at all and I'm doing it. And, oh, that's cool. Everybody does stuff like this. It just took so much of the pressure off. And then, and again, I don't want to make this sound like a formula or a technique, but we could kind of just help him feel better about it. And then when we would notice him doing it, it wasn't like, we kind of went from stop biting your nails, get your hand out of your mouth, to like, hey, buddy, you're doing it again. Hey, buddy, you're doing it again. And it was a really fun thing. And we almost laughed about it. Hey, you're doing it again. And the whole family would kind of laugh about it a little more. And it, we saw it start to come off a little bit. It took time. I'm not going to say it happened overnight. But then once he stopped biting his nails as much, we got really excited about it. Like, look how cool that is. Like, you used to do this all the time and now you aren't. And I could see him start to take this pride and, oh yeah, I changed in that way. I did this thing and now I don't. So to kind of answer your question, again, that's just my story. But I think even with children, like we can help them see everything we're doing. We're just doing the best we can, with how we feel in the moment. And as soon as we start to normalize things like that and just make it lighter and almost be able to laugh about it and point it out, it's going to be so helpful.
Right. So I should not scream at him all the time, like,
try not to
punish him. If you don't, I won't buy this and that. Okay.
I wouldn't recommend.
I remember that.
Did that help so far? Did that help so far?
No, actually, there was a point where he stopped biting his nails, and then with some kind of pressure in the family, he started again, and now he's with it. So it's a pity. But yeah, this is definitely, it sounds cheaper than all those special nail varnishes that are bitter, and you put it in your mouth and you bite it, you go like so it's definitely better. Thank you for that.
We have Aura. I will unmute you now, Aura. And
yes, and I do apologize for my missing video. They showed me a low connectivity, so I prefer to listen in good quality rather than having an image. I loved what Amy said in the last example, because actually what this leads to is that first of all we need to give acceptance to the people that they are not made wrong, and this immediately opens a conversation. And I remember, and actually, I think that we are all here a party of ex-smokers, yeah? And our deepest memories of changing, it was the shock when, wow, we quit smoking. Yeah? And I was in the same experience. I had the same experience. And what I remember, I went through a seminar of how to give up, the easy way to give up smoking. A 5-hour seminar, which I went in as a smoker and I went out as a non-smoker. At that time, I thought it's absolutely voodoo, and I did not smoke since. But what I enjoyed is that, first of all, they accepted us there as smokers. They didn't say we are wrong. They say you are a smoker now. And for that reason, they were giving us every 50 minutes, they were giving us a smoking break. So it was that acceptance that today and before the end of the course, you will be and you stay a smoker. So again, it's the acceptance that you are not made wrong. What for me was the breakthrough is when they made me realize that I'm a junkie. And again, this is coming from awareness, yeah? Awareness of your habit, which very, very strange, they called it a junkie, yeah? Somebody who cannot give up to something. And then I started to observe the situation I'm in from a totally different perspective. And once they made, because at that time, and everybody probably here remember saying, yeah, but if I want, I can give up. And yet we don't give up. Yeah. And I smoke because it makes me feel relaxed. Damn it, it doesn't. And exactly as you said, Laurie. So once you have the awareness that actually you are not in full control, which in their definition was a bit of a junkie, you look to your own problem for a different perspective. And then a different learning occurs. And I remember another example where I was lucky enough to participate in a seminar with Richard Bandler, Dr. Richard Bandler, one of the co-founders of NLP, where he was giving us an example how he solves schizophrenia. And he was giving a very funny example of he went into a hospital and a patient there was looking on a wall to find an opening to a different dimension. And everybody was dragging him back to the room, and then, no, you are again seeing things. And Bandler said, actually, do you see it again as well? Because, I have seen it once. And the guy totally relaxed. He said, really? And it's like your story, Amy, with the kids. Yeah? Adults are doing it as well. I'm not made wrong. And he said, yes, man, I've seen it. But, if you were lucky to see it once in your life, second time, it's very improbable. So I think you should wait some 10 or 15 years this to happen again. And then the guy relaxed. He said, so somebody accepted that I'm not crazy, gave me a solution to my tension, and the guy solved his problem. Maybe in 15 years he went back to look for his opening to a new dimension. But it's amazing how in awareness and accepting that people are not made wrong, you can start a conversation at a different level. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Sorry. Forgetting to unmute myself.
It's so great to see, and again, it points back to our nature, like, because we're well already, all we need to do is relax. When we relax, the wellness is right there. Nothing needs to be added, no steps, no new information. When we relax, we have everything we need. So it's a very simple answer, but it's also really profound and really true, and it points to how we're designed.
I also have quite a bit of social media addictions that people talk about around me, and I remember, and it points back in a way to the same truth, that the problem is hardly ever the problem, but most likely the solution. Because I remember when I moved to Czech Republic, and in the first year, since I was away from my friends, my family, and whatever, social media was my way of communicating with the people that used to be close to me. And to the extent that the first thing I was doing in the morning was to open the channels and to see who what is doing, and at some point that became irrelevant because I had plenty of socializing, but I still had the habit. And it was enough to see what's happening, that it's not necessary and it takes a lot of time from me, and that was that. But clarity helped. And I think the point, or the way I see it, is the clarity that helps us. Not the fact that in 15 years we'll have a new opening or not, but the clarity in the moment, the fact that we make that up.
Mm-hmm. 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 Okay, if I may ask another question connected to this. Let's say that I bit my nails all life, or let's put another personal. Let's say I'm chocolate addict, right? But I need to have at least 1 bar of chocolate every day. And at one point I realized that it's probably because I'm really tired and my body screams for energy. So the only thing that I come up with is to have something sweet, and chocolate is my favorite thing. And then I stop eating chocolate every night, and I'm happy, and I try to rest, whatever. And one day I find myself in the middle of the night with eating chocolate bar again. And I go and say, oh my God, I'm useless. I did it again. And what was the point of me trying to quit? And I think at this point, I can say quitting smoking or whatever else. How do you treat the people if they fall back to what was their addiction or bad habit, and now they are beating up themselves for it? What would you
May I say something before you answer, Amy, please? I still use social media. And that's not a problem.
I know, but let's say it's not life-threatening, right? What if people really go back to
I also have a McDonald's once a month, and that doesn't kill me either. I think...
Not yet. No, kidding.
Once a month, I think I'll survive.
I like... Can I just say something? No.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
No. With the habit thing, it's same with the chocolate bars. I think is at night, if you blame yourself for it, for having lost it or doing it again, that's also a label. Yeah, it's like, well, I just felt like chocolate and it was there. Why does it have to be a big thing? And that is so much more comforting to see it with a smile on your face. And it reminded me of lots of my clients. They complain about their weight, and some of them weigh themselves like 3 times a day, and then there's no relation. Like yesterday night I ate something light and still have a pound more. The other day I had some noodles and I had less. And I said, you're so preoccupied with your weight, how about just not weighing yourself for 3 weeks or 4 weeks? They say, no, can't do that. It's like, why not? I mean, you're alive, you're healthy. There's a life beyond the, I guess, scale is the word? Scale, yeah. Beyond the scale, and just free yourself from the habit. Do like a weight detox and just go with how you feel. And don't count the calories and don't look, it doesn't matter if for the next 364 days you're going to weigh a pound more or less. Who cares? As long as you feel good. But you don't even know how you feel because you're just an addict to your scale. And that's so crazy because it's all made up. And it's so weird. And I love when they sometimes they look up and then they say, well, it's true. I tried it for a day and it felt great, because they go with how they feel and not what the scale tells them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like whether it's a life-threatening habit or not, when we fall back and do something we've done for a long time, for that to be, now we're going to feel it. We're going to feel, okay, I did this again. We're going to feel the effects of that, whatever that is. It just doesn't feel good in general. But for that to be like this gigantic thing where we failed and now we're back in the beginning and this whole dramatic thing, that takes a lot of thinking. I mean, it can only look that way if you're very much in your head with a firm expectation about how you think it should go, which is perfect, apparently, where you used to be versus where you are now, and what it all means. It's a lot of thinking. It's a lot of concepts and judgment and made up stuff in there. If you're just in life, any of us, just in a moment, and you eat some chocolate or light a cigarette or take a drink or whatever it might be, there's you in that moment doing one thing. Mm-hmm. That's it. And then our mind jumps in and tells a big convoluted story about it all. So it's exactly what you're saying, Kirsten. It's like we can live by the scale and the numbers and the this and the that, but that's all so just habitual thought. It's just stuff we think, and we think that kind of existence. But even falling back into habits, I mean, it happens all the time. My favorite kind of like little metaphor illustration for this is like, if you live somewhere, let's say you live in a house for 10 years and then you move across town to a different house, there's a great chance that you're going to leave work one day, you're going to have a lot on your mind, and you're going to go to the old house because you went that way on autopilot pretty much for 10 years. That's what our brain does. It's so efficient like that. It will bring your habit back to you. There's a great chance. Even if you've had a big insight, there's a great chance you will have a thought or a fleeting desire or something for that habit again, because our brain is really efficient and it's very habitual. But if that happened at your house, you wouldn't sit there and say, oh, I guess I'm meant to live here for life. I better go kick those people out and move back in my old house. I'm such a loser. I failed. Like, it just makes no sense. You'd say, oh, you'd probably laugh about it and you'd go to your new house and it'd be over with. And if we could do that with ourselves, with this whole setback and relapse, it wouldn't even be a conversation, and things would be so much easier.
Less judging too, and then you don't feel like a failure if you once in 3 weeks you have a cigarette and now I'm a smoke again. Right. Says who? It says my thinking. It was just a moment. I love that analogy with the house. Yeah, because the autopilot thing. But who says that's now you're addicted again? Yeah. No. Just the moment I lit my cigarette and probably didn't even taste good, and so that's it.
Right.
And that's really, really freeing, I think, for people to have that experience, because they're used to be labeled for, well, I'm either a smoker or non-smoker. I'm either constantly overweight and have to weigh myself all the time, or I don't.
Yeah.
But that's in their mind.
Yeah.
Lori, would you like to add something before I ask next?
No.
No, okay. So I would like to start wrapping it up because Amy said she doesn't have so much time as we set up. Anyway, there is one more thing. I've read in books describing new psychology of 3 principles about safety net, but still it's not pretty clear to me. What shall I sort of think of it? Would you explain it to me?
Yeah, so the idea of a safety net? Is that what you're asking? Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'll just tell you what it means to me. Like, seeing that we have a nature, that we are what's before all this experience, and that like we are that clarity and that peace, and in that place, common sense and wisdom and ideas and all kinds of things, resilience, all of that is right there. So it's like everything good that we ever wanted to be, plus times infinity, like more than we can imagine, is us. It is the design. There's like it's equally there in every single person on earth, and we just think over it. We think, whether we think schizophrenic thoughts or addicted thoughts or happy thoughts, doesn't matter. We have that same core, and we're just thinking over it. And the thinking, I mean, we get caught up in it. We act on it. We get in trouble by it all the time. We suffer because we're caught up in it. That's equally human. That's true of everyone. We all do that to different degrees all the time. But to know that that thinking that we're being caught up in is designed to move, and that as it comes and goes, it's like clouds. You know, the clouds, even when it looks very, very cloudy for a long time, there's movement there. And we all know that no matter where you live, eventually you're going to get a day that has fewer clouds. Like there's a constant change in what's happening. And there's something that health and that wellness is there beyond all that. It's always going to be there for us. To me, that's a safety net. That's like, I can feel as horrible as a person can ever feel, as stuck as a person can ever feel. And I can only be feeling that by thought. And that thought can only be something that's moving and shifting and changing. And it doesn't actually even touch who I am. Even if it's true, whatever that means. Like, even if I lose my business, lose my house, and lose my family, like these are true facts. Like I can only feel a thought up experience of that. And that experience is always changing. And it can't touch what's stable. So to me, that's like a safety net, you know? I mean, it's like, it frees you up to just be human, to not have to numb our feelings away, to not have to fall into habits and addictions and all of this, to not feel certain things, because we can feel it, we can let it move through us, and then it will make way for something different. And so we aren't really ever stuck in anything.
Right. Wow. Do you want me to answer the same question, Kat? Yes. I think I'm trying not to say the same things that Amy said, even if I can't say different things. Maybe I will say the things differently. I think it's who we really are, the safety net, what we are made of, all this, the potential that we have, or like, even if it's cloudy, the sun is still there. Continuing your metaphor with the clouds, yeah, the thinking is the bad weather is the clouds, and the sun is still there. And stretching this metaphor as much as we can, it's that light inside of us, is that wisdom inside of us, is that what we are made of, that is the safety net. And put it to the test anytime you want, and in any kind of circumstance you are. And just by asking, how am I really? Behind all this sad thinking or grief thinking or addictive thinking, how am I really? And it's interesting that every time the answer is the same, I'm well. Behind all that, I'm well. And that all will go like smoke.
Great, thank you. It helps me. I hope it helps the viewers that watch it now and also later on our channel, on YouTube channel as well. Amy, a quick question. Do you have still time, or do you have to leave us?
No, I'm okay.
Yeah, you're fine. Because we have here a question. If you could give us tips for transcending OCD thoughts, please.
Yeah, I mean, OCD thoughts are no different than anything we've been talking about here. And I think that's something we can sort of know in theory, but to really see that every thought's exactly the same, that's huge, because there's this certain way that, like we were sharing earlier, how we can make things heavy and different and serious. You know, nail biting's different, or children are different, or smoking is different, or, you know, it just, everything feels so personal and heavy. But to see that whatever our mind is giving us is just what a mind is giving us in that moment. And we aren't that. I mean, it's a really simple way of putting it, but it's really where this is exploring that for ourselves and feeling that separation, feeling that deeply ourselves, like knowing that when we have a thought and it comes to life in a way for us, when that thought then goes away, we don't say like, where'd I go? Part of me's gone. Where am I? Who am I? You know, like we know we aren't that thinking. So we just keep seeing that separation more and more. And it's not always easy when those thoughts are personal and they're scary and they're repetitive and they're about us and they've been there forever. I mean, of course we're going to feel like they're us. And of course we're going to get kind of tuned into them. But we just keep seeing, oh, that's thinking. And we keep looking toward, really more importantly, keep looking toward the safety net we've been sharing and what's really us, what doesn't fleet and move and change by our moods and all of that kind of stuff. And it's almost like, you know, it's almost like we've been looking here and just ignoring this, but then that starts to shift. And now suddenly it's like, oh, I'm well, and my mind goes in circles at times. Like the whole thing can start to shift.
And why is OCD a problem?
Yeah, true.
If anything, it keeps us tidier. I apologize. I am a joker at this time of evening.
Are
Thank you.
there any more questions? There is big thank you to Amy. And if there are not more questions from the participants, I would like to ask you ladies to tell us, because you are both going to speak at the conference. Laurie is going to speak on Friday, May 18th, and Amy is our star guest on Saturday. She's going to open Saturday. And you are also having 2 workshops in the afternoon block each day. I believe, Laurie, you've got 4 of them, and Amy will do 2 sets of the workshops. Would
Just
you
do not test me to remember the names for all of them. Please don't.
Would you just invite people maybe to your speech and workshops? Amy can start so that you can memorize or remember.
Do I have to remember what mine are? No, I do know that for the Saturday morning talk, I'm really excited to just go deeper into what we've been sharing here and to tell stories of how we all at times feel so caught up in our experience. And then because we're so caught up in that, we start to go to work trying to fix it, and how that kind of gets us deeper a lot of times, and how this understanding, just looking past what's showing up in our faces and looking at what's true beyond that, gives people freedom. So, I mean, that's the big gist, and I have so many stories to share, and yeah, I'm just really looking forward to that. And in the workshops, I'd like to focus, and some of them at least, a little more on those ways we tend to treat what looks like a problem to us. We use willpower, we use hard work, and what if we just let up on that? What starts to happen? So, yeah, I'm excited. I really, really hope that people can make the conference. I can't wait.
Great, perfect.
And after certain pressure from this lovely blonde lady, I came up with a name for my speech on Friday, which is twice as far in half the time with half the effort. This is how we called it. Yeah, I just love the way it sounds, and it's something that my clients can vouch for experiencing in the time that they work with me, and after that. And in the workshops, it's going to be a mix for me, because I'll do from more perspective. There are people who are interested in what it means to coach from principles. There are people that are interested to understand what does this do for performance, and how it influences performance. Then I'm trying to. I also speak about listening, or I have a workshop about listening and how is that useful in relationship, in business, and basically in life. And I think that's that. Oh yes, the surprising results of a simplified mind. There you go. And I hope people will be there and will join the conference and the workshops. And Prague is lovely.
It is, and I'm really glad that we are doing the workshops, because everybody who comes will have a chance to chat with the two of you and other 9 workshoppers in person in a very small circle, and get in touch with what's really bothering them. And I think that's something extraordinary, especially for a 3P conference. We'll do this, guys, in both days, in both afternoons. So you will have a variety of 4 different workshops to choose from during the conference. So if you did not make up your mind whether to come or not, definitely do come. We'll love to see you. Right. Thank you very much for being here. Once again, I would like to repeat, this is a webinar that we do to support the conference that is coming. The conference is called Understanding Human Mind. It's coming very soon. It's in May 18th and 19th. And since we have quite many speakers and workshoppers, we will do next week, already on Monday, next webinar. This one will be with Mike O'Neill. I believe he will like to speak about creating impossible, since this is a big thing for him now. He published his new book, Creating Impossible, at the beginning of this year. Martin Jotov, our colleague from the Human Potential Academy, will join us to translate from English to Czech. I believe we will see Lori again. And it will be this time available on YouTube stream, so you will have to do some questioning through comments. But do not hesitate to do so, because Michael is very prompt to answer, just as our ladies were today. I'm so glad having you. It was so nice having you, really. Thank you very much, everybody.
And for those who didn't catch it from the beginning, we'll have the recording on the website and on the Facebook. So keep close. Thank you. I unmuted everyone. And